We went on a 2-week road trip across southern Xinjiang in China. Here is how it went. Since it was dark when we arrived in Tashkurgan the previous night, we only saw how beautiful the surrounding mountains were when we woke up the next morning on day 11 of our trip. Today we were going to explore the famous Panlong ancient road, which we had seen in many photos and videos and really wanted to experience. So we drove out of Tashkurgan heading south on the G314, which is also known as the Pamir Highway, and ends at the border crossing between China and Pakistan. After a while on the Pamir Highway, we got off and started going uphill into the mountain range that the Panlong Road crosses. This is one of the most dramatic roads we have seen, and with the top of the mountain pass being at about 4,200 meters in altitude, that's over 10,000 feet, we could feel the decrease in oxygen levels, although didn't need the oxygen cans we bought. We stopped multiple times and walked on some of the dizzying platforms as well as took lots of photos and videos. We even bought a coffee at the top of the pass. It turns out that the road is one way, which made it so much easier to traverse since it was already narrow and had heavy traffic. But that also meant that we couldn't go back the way we came and had to do a full loop from the other side of the mountain in order to get back to Tashkurgan. This ended up being a good thing as there were plenty of interesting things on that side and it took us a few more hours of driving and stopping. The drive itself took us through multiple Tajik villages and we ran into a lot of livestock on the narrow roads. This part of Xinjiang is mostly inhabited by the Tajik people, who we could recognize by the distinctive way they dress. The road soon turned to natural scenery once more, running through mountain ranges and beside multiple lakes, and most beautifully, lots of wetlands with their magnificent mountainous backdrops. As we returned back to the G314 north of Tashkurgan, we decided to drive a few kilometers further north to stop by an interesting viewpoint of the wetlands that we had skipped the previous night as it was already getting dark. This is one of the iconic scenes from the region, so is well worth the stop. We then made our way back towards Tashkurgan in order to find our stay for the night. We had decided that we would do some glamping for 2 of our 3 nights here and picked this high-end campground just outside of Tashkurgan. It was about a 10-minute drive from the town on the other side of the river and had stunning views of the town and mountains. Once there, we checked in, were driven to our tent, which was definitely high-end, with a full king-sized bed, radiant heated floors, and a full bathroom with a shower. This was a perfect spot to fly the drone and capture some of the local landscape. After unpacking and resting for a while, we drove out of the campground and went to town to have dinner. After trying to get into a couple of restaurants that are very highly rated on social media, which were really busy and had long waiting times, we settled on a local restaurant that doesn't have many reviews, but one that we liked so much that we ate there again the following night. Day 12 of our trip started with a stunning view of the sun rising and shining on the local peaks from our tent. This magnificent view was one of the reasons we wanted to stay here, and we were certainly not disappointed. After a buffet breakfast, which was also very scenic, we headed out for the day along the same scenic road that brought us here the previous night. Today was designated to exploring the rest of the area around the Pamir Highway, so we planned to drive to the Pakistani border, then on the drive back explore other side roads and areas off the highway. The distance to the border is about 100 kilometers from Tashkurgan, and since this section of the highway has less traffic, it was quite fast and smooth with one rest stop in the middle and great views of the snowy peaks and local herds. As we got closer to the border, we started seeing evidence of Pakistan, such as trucks and signs indicating how far we were from the border and from Khunjerab Pass, which is on the Pakistani side of the border. This part of the road also had some protective barriers to reduce snowdrift across the highway, as well as the high arrows that point to the edge of the road in a snowstorm. The road soon got more curvy as it went up towards the pass, and with an altitude of around 4,600 meters above sea level, we were ready with our oxygen cans, but again, didn't need them. As we approached the border crossing, we realized that the last 1 kilometer of the road to the border was only open to border crossers, and that in order to see the famous Friendship Gate, we would need to park the car and go the last kilometer by bus. Unfortunately, however, and extremely bizarre, foreigners were not allowed to travel that last kilometer for sightseeing, and so we couldn't get to the actual gate even though we could see it far off in the distance. So we spent some time looking around at the vendors, had some snacks, and bought a coffee while contemplating our next steps. We decided we would continue with the previous plan and started driving back before turning off the highway to explore some of the side roads in the area. The road started off as long and straight, and we made a couple of stops to see the cattle, camels, and other domestic animals that showed an interest in us, while also taking in the amazing scenery. At one point, we were about 20 kilometers away from the border with Afghanistan, and similar distances to Tajikistan and Pakistan. One of the interesting stops had to do with Master ChuanZang, probably the most illustrious monk in Chinese Buddhism, who is said to have passed through this WakHan corridor on his famed 17-year pilgrimage to India. A nearby spot also mentions Marco Polo as having traveled through this corridor on his travels. Check out my separate video on this site. After driving around for a few hours, we then headed back towards Tashkurgan, where we wanted to explore the Tajik villages around our campsite. We stopped along the way to enjoy the view of the wetlands, and then after some driving around the local villages, we went into town, had dinner at the same restaurant from the previous night, and ended our last full day in Tashkurgan. If you liked this video, then please hit the like button, leave a comment, or subscribe to see my other Xinjiang videos. Thanks for watching.